And the United States is asking China for help as it weighs potential responses to a cyber attack against Sony Pictures Entertainment. Well, the FBI says North Korea is behind the attack that led to threats on movie theaters and the cancellation of the release of the movie, The Interview. A senior Obama administrator says the U.S. and China have shared information about the attack. North Korea is proposing a joint investigation with the U.S. on the attack and warns if the U.S. does not agree, there will be grave consequences. Meanwhile, Sony is trying to come up with new ways to release The Interview. And many are asking, what sanctions can the U.S. possibly do to North Korea that we don't already have in place? That's our topic this half hour. And joining us live in the newsroom is Fox 26 legal analyst Chris Tritico and the Roundup panel. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. You know, that was exactly my question. What can we possibly do to a country that we don't even speak to? But you gotta love North Korea's response. You join us in a joint investigation or we'll do it again. That's about as funny as it gets. Let me introduce our panel. Mustafa Tamiz, our political analyst, Jackie Bally, public policy analyst. Good morning. I cracked myself up. Good morning again. I mean, what can we do to North Korea?
Look, the president talked about some kind of measured response, and I think that's why they're reaching out to China to see if there's something can be done. There's a lot we can talk about when it comes to North Korea and this cyber attack, but this year has been filled with it. We saw that with what happened with Target and a lot of the retailers, that their data breach, credit card breach occurred, to this. And one thing that I see that's not being talked about very much, we tell our kids to watch what we put on Facebook, that it may affect their college entrance, it may affect getting their first job. We really have to remind ourselves that when we send an email to somebody, even if that person is a confidential email to that person, there's lots of people along that food chain that are likely to see it. There's a lot of network administrators. We saw that with what happened with Edward Snowden, where diplomatic emails got released. The notion of privacy is very elusive in our time, and what we say and how we say it has to be measured far differently than what all of us imagine.
The president was critical of Sony for pulling the picture back, saying, what happens if North Korea disagrees with a news story, and how are we going to stop this if we knuckle under? I'm not sure that Sony had much of a choice in the face of a potential attack.
Yeah, well, not only that, they didn't have much of a choice. The president of Sony said, because a lot of the media outlets didn't want to have the film, so they really weren't going to. There was no way to actually release the film. They weren't going to make any money, and so they're actually still trying to look at different outlets and different ways to release the film. But right now, there are no options, and we can't do anything else to North Korea. I think we need to look at our own grids and make sure that we protect ourselves, because this is just a warning of what actually could happen. And if we have a real cyber attack, all of our infrastructure, can you imagine everything that we know, water, sewer, everything, getting access to money, everything is based on our computer system. So we have to be more, companies have to be more, take more of an internal control and make sure that their grids and our information is protected.
If a country like North Korea can do it, nothing's safe. I mean, they're as backward as they're going to get.
Well, at the same time, when you put the resources of any state, you know, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars can be used to do something like this, versus other people don't have that kind of resource. This is the first time where you saw a nation state attack a corporation. We're seeing that in China, attacking a lot of our oil and gas companies too.
Let me go to Hillary. She's monitoring our social media.
Yeah, that's right. People are wondering, and asking you specifically, Chris, Jackie, you mentioned infrastructure. Does this show a weakness in the U.S. infrastructure, whether it's legally or even economically, in this situation?
Well, you know, it wasn't an attack on the United States, on the government computer system. It was an attack on a private corporation's computer system. But I think it shows an overall weakness, as Mustafa was saying, an overall weakness in everyone's computer systems if a country like North Korea can break into Sony's system and steal everything. And so I think that you're going to see the United States and our allies work very diligently, Jackie Bally, in the next year or so, or 2 years, to shore up everyone's computer systems to prevent rogue countries like North Korea from doing this.
Sure, because it just proves how vulnerable we actually are. And if they can do this to someone like Sony, they can do it to another major corporation. They could probably do it to the government. And this is just a lesson that we need to take in and make sure that we learn from it.
Is the president right? Should Sony just release the film?
Look, I think Sony's looking at what all corporations do. They talk to their lawyer, right? And their lawyer probably said the liability of putting this out.
If one place blows up, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble. And then everybody would turn around and said, why did they release it? So, look, Sony's not in the business of protecting free speech. Sony's in the business of making money. And they looked at this as a big liability and they walked away from it. We're likely to see this film again. It had horrible reviews.
Right.
But
now everyone wants to see it.
But everybody wants to see it. Look, I think that the walk away from this is that we understand how vulnerable we all are. And one thing that each of us can do is really change the way we communicate. We can't put things out there in the cyberspace and not expect digital fingerprints to be out there.
Doesn't this embolden rogue countries to, all of them, to start trying to hack into computer systems for just to disrupt our way of life?
Well, I think that's what the president was trying to say. He was saying, don't give in to intimidation, because he feels that by pulling back on releasing of the film, that he's giving Korea leverage and saying, North Korea leverage, and saying, he intimidated you, he bullied you, and you did exactly what he wanted. And I think at this point, again, we should take the lesson from that, try to shore up our infrastructure, make sure we are protected up from cyber bullies and cyber attacks like these, and make sure that countries like North Korea don't get that kind of leverage.
One thing we saw, when Sony went out, they were really by themselves. The industry didn't come out and support them.
That's the point I was just about to make.
Yeah, look, the reality is Sony's in the business of making money. They saw the liability and they walked away from it. People talk a lot about, First Amendment rights, but when it come down to it, corporate America really folded. They did not put their name out there because they did not want to get hacked and they don't not want to get attacked. So for all of this kind of grandiose conversation, at the end of the day, we have to look at this as this is the beginning and this has been long coming. We saw Stuxnet where we used it as an attack, and now you're going to see other nations use it as well.